Picture this. You walk into the store needing three things. Three, you have the list in your phone, you grabbed your reusable bags off the hook by the door, and you tell yourself, and this is the important part, you tell yourself you'll be in and out in 10 minutes. And 45 minutes later, you're standing at the register watching the total climb past $200, then $250, then past $300, and somewhere in the back of your brain you know that at least half of what's in that cart was not on your list when you walked in, but somehow it happened anyway. And the craziest part, you feel fine about it. You feel like you actually won. My name is Nico, and today we're going to talk about the biggest shopping mistake middle-class families make, and it's not what you think. It's not the big splurge. It's not the vacation you put on the card, and it's not the impulse purchase you regret by Tuesday. It's something much quieter than that. Something that happens every week in the same familiar stores with the same comfortable emotional logic, and most families never even clock it as a problem. If you're already subscribed, thank you. And if you're new here, this channel is about understanding the real math behind everyday financial decisions, because most of the time nobody shows you what those decisions actually cost over a lifetime. Hit subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and let's get into it. So here's the backdrop. The average American household income right now sits somewhere around $77,000 to $80,000 a year, depending on the year you're looking at. And yet the average household carries over $10,000 in credit card debt, has less than $1,000 in liquid emergency savings, and consistently reports feeling financially stretched despite having what most people would consider a decent income. And we've all kind of accepted that this tension exists, this weird gap between earning a real income and still feeling like you're barely keeping up, but nobody talks clearly about the specific day-to-day mechanism that creates it. I'm going to make the argument today that for millions of middle-class families, a massive part of that mechanism is a very specific shopping psychology, one that repeats itself every single week. And it costs the average family somewhere between $300 and $500 a month that they never consciously decided to spend. Let me show you the math on that in a few minutes, because you need to see the actual long-term number to feel how serious this is. But first, let me introduce you to Kevin and Melissa. Kevin and Melissa Garcia are a completely normal family. Suburbs, 2 kids in elementary school, both working. Combined income right around $95,000 a year. By most standards, that's a solid, genuinely good income. They have a modest home, 2 decent cars, and they feel like they're making reasonable financial decisions. They both contribute to their 401ks. They have a budgeting app on their phones that they check a couple of times a month. They are responsible, they are thoughtful, and they genuinely believe they are smart with money. But here's the thing about Kevin and Melissa. They are what I'd call habitual overshoppers. And the reason I use that word specifically is because they don't think of themselves that way at all. Ask Kevin and he'll tell you he's a careful shopper. He waits for sales, he buys in bulk, he has the Warehouse Club membership and he uses it, he clips digital coupons at the checkout. Melissa watches Amazon for price drops. She's in 3 different Facebook groups about deals on kids' clothing. They genuinely believe they are working the system in their favor. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the data does not agree with that self-assessment. The Consumer Expenditure Survey, published annually by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, shows something that a lot of researchers find genuinely striking. Households consistently and significantly underestimate what they spend each month on general merchandise. The stuff you buy at Target, Costco, Walmart, Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Home Depot, not dining out, not subscriptions, just stuff. The average family believes they're spending somewhere in the range of $150 to $200 a month in that category. The actual average is nearly $450 to $500. That is a massive consistent gap between what people believe they're spending and what they're actually spending. And it's not random. It's structural. It's the same mistake being made the same way every week. Kevin and Melissa are living that gap in real time and they have no idea. Here's what a typical Saturday looks like for them. Kevin heads to Costco. He needs 3 things: olive oil, toilet paper, and some protein bars for his gym bag. Reasonable. He's in and out in about 45 minutes and he spends $287. Now, technically, the price per unit on bulk olive oil and 48 rolls of toilet paper is a genuinely good deal. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but he also came home with a rotisserie chicken, 2 bottles of wine on a display near the entrance, a book he'll probably get through 2 chapters of, a set of new dish towels because the ones they have are starting to look a bit worn, and a portable phone charger that was sitting at the end of an aisle and seemed useful. That's $287 for 3 things he needed and 5 he didn't. And Kevin, honestly, Kevin feels good about it. He got a great deal on the toilet paper. Meanwhile, Melissa does a midweek Target run for laundry detergent and granola bars for the kids' lunches. She spends $163. She came home with the detergent, the granola bars, a scented candle, a new throw pillow for the living room because the current one is kind of flat now, 2 clearance sweaters that were 40% off and a legitimately good deal, and a small organizational bin she saw near the front of the store and thought would work perfectly in the mudroom. Neither Kevin nor Melissa did anything crazy. Neither of these purchases would cause an argument or a serious conversation. They're just normal. They're what normal shopping looks like for a normal family. And that is exactly the problem. Here's where we do the math, because this is the part that changes how you think about this. Conservative estimate. Kevin and Melissa are overspending their intended shopping budget by about $400 a month, and $400 is honestly on the low side of what consumer behavior research typically finds. But let's use $400. That's $4,800 a year in purchases they made but didn't plan for when they left the house. Over 10 years, that's $48,000, which is already a meaningful number. But here's the part that will blow your mind. If Kevin and Melissa had taken that $400 a month, just that $400 they're currently losing to shopping drift, and put it into a basic index fund earning the historical average annual return of around 10%, over 30 years that becomes just over $904,000. $900,000 from $400 a month. The math is brutal when you really sit with it. The thing that feels like nothing. The extra stuff in the cart, the sale sweaters, the candle, the useful phone charger, that entire pattern, compounded over a working lifetime, has a price tag of nearly $1 million. The total amount they'd actually deposit out of pocket over those 30 years is $144,000. The rest, $760,000, is pure compound growth. All of it sitting there as potential. And right now, it's just going into the house in the form of things they don't really need. That's not a small thing. And the reason this happens, the actual reason, is not that Kevin and Melissa are careless or financially irresponsible. It's that the retail environments they're shopping in are specifically, scientifically, and deliberately engineered to produce exactly this outcome. Let me talk about what's actually happening inside your brain when you walk into a warehouse club or a big box retail store, because this is where the psychology gets really interesting. Major retailers have spent decades and genuinely staggering amounts of money studying and manipulating consumer behavior in ways that are way more sophisticated than most people realize. The layout of a Costco, where everything is placed and why, is not accidental. The rotisserie chickens at the back of the store are not there for your convenience. The fact that you have to walk past the clothing section, the electronics section, the seasonal display, and the book table before you ever reach the thing you actually came for is not a logistical reality. It is a deliberate, choreographed pathway designed to maximize what ends up in your cart. Retail researchers describe something called the treasure hunt effect in warehouse shopping environments. Inventory rotates constantly and unpredictably, so you never quite know what's going to be in a given aisle on a given week. And that uncertainty triggers a mild scarcity response in your brain. If I don't get this today, it might not be here the next time I come. Warehouse clubs lean into this intentionally. What it means in practice is that your brain is running a low-grade scarcity program for your entire shopping trip, and a brain running a scarcity program buys more. Not because you're weak or impulsive, because you are human and this is how the system was built. Target is running a completely different but equally calculated playbook. The front section of a Target, in which their employees informally call the racetrack, is designed to rotate constantly with seasonal, on-trend, and relatively inexpensive items in the $5 to $30 range. The psychological function of this is something called treating yourself. A low-cost impulse purchase that gives your brain a small hit of reward and, crucially, lowers your overall purchase resistance before you've even started shopping for the things you actually came for. By the time you're in the cleaning supply aisle, you've already bought something you didn't plan on. Your brain has justified it, and your resistance to the next unplanned purchase is meaningfully lower than it was when you walked in the door. None of this is conspiracy theory. It's documented consumer psychology that's been published, studied, and discussed openly in retail industry research for decades. I'm not saying it's malicious, but I am saying that if you don't know it's happening, you genuinely cannot protect yourself from it. You will keep thinking you're a smart shopper and keep spending $400 more than you meant to every single month. Now, let me address something because I know some of you are already composing the comment. But Nico, buying in bulk is smart. I save money per unit. And that's true. The unit price on Costco toilet paper is genuinely better than what you'd pay elsewhere. I'm not disputing that. But here's the thing. The savings per unit math completely ignores the total basket. Studies on warehouse club shopping consistently show that members spend significantly more per trip and significantly more per month than non-members, even after you account for the per unit savings on the items they actually needed. The savings on the things you came for get erased, and then some by the spending on the things you didn't. And that's before you factor in the annual membership fee, which is just the price of admission to the game. And that's the crazy part. The trap doesn't feel like a trap because every individual item has a reasonable defense. The dish towels were genuinely getting old. The phone charger actually is useful. The sweaters really were 40% off. Each purchase, taken by itself, has a logical justification. But the math of the whole pattern tells a completely different story. And because each decision feels reasonable, the pattern never gets examined as a pattern. It just keeps running. Let me tell you about Kevin and Melissa's neighbors, the Wrights. The Wrights have almost identical household income to the Garcias. Same neighborhood, similar house, 2 kids. But the Wrights have a rule that Kevin privately thinks is a little excessive. They don't go to Costco or Target without a written list, and the list is not flexible. You buy what's on the list and you leave. If you see something that's not on the list, something that seems useful, something that's on sale, something that would be genuinely nice to have, you write it down on your phone and you give it 2 weeks. If you still want it after 2 weeks, you go get it. And about 80% of the time, they don't go back. The desire just fades. It dissolves when there's a waiting period built in between the wanting and the buying. The Wrights don't experience this as deprivation. They experience it as defense. Defense against environments that are specifically designed to separate them from money they didn't intend to spend. And the gap in monthly spending between the Wrights and the Garcias. About $350 to $400 a month on general retail. The Wrights have been investing that difference since their mid-30s. You already know what that becomes. Here's what I want you to think about with the opportunity cost. Because it's not just about the money itself. There's a version of Kevin and Melissa 15 years from now who have a much larger financial cushion, who can take a leave of absence if they want to, who can handle a $4,000 car repair without any real stress, who have options. And the distance between that version and the version where they just kept doing the Saturday Costco run with an open cart, that entire distance is created by this one quiet pattern, not by one big mistake, by 100 small yeses repeated week after week, until they added up to something that genuinely changed their financial trajectory. So what do you actually do? I'm not here to tell you to cancel your warehouse membership or to never set foot in a Target again. That's not the point, and that's not practical advice. The point is pre-commitment. Consumer behavior research is really consistent on this. The single most effective defense against retail environment manipulation is deciding in advance exactly what you're going to buy, writing it down, and treating that list as a contract with yourself rather than a suggestion. That's the whole thing. It doesn't require willpower in the store because the decision was already made outside of it, in a neutral environment, without the background hum of the treasure hunt effect, and the racetrack and the subtle scarcity triggers working on your brain. The second tool is something behavioral economists call implementation intention, which sounds like an academic term, but it just means this. You decide in advance, explicitly, what you will do when you feel the pull to add something to the cart. When I see something not on my list, I take a photo of it and add it to a waiting list instead of buying it right now. That's the whole implementation. Studies on this approach show that shoppers who do it reduce their unplanned purchases by 30 to 50% without ever feeling deprived. Because the item isn't gone. You haven't said no forever. You've just introduced a gap between the impulse and the action. And that gap is where most impulse purchases go to die quietly. The version of your financial life where you are actually building wealth. Not just earning a real income, but accumulating real financial security. That version is almost always separated from the current version by a small set of quiet, boring, consistent behavioral choices that compound over years and decades. Buying the 3 things you came for and leaving is one of those choices. It doesn't feel significant in the moment. It feels like restraint. Like you're not participating in something. But do it consistently for 10 years and the math has built something that changes what your options look like for the rest of your life. You become the kind of person who shops with intention. Not because you can't afford anything else, but because you have genuinely run the real numbers and you understand what one more thing in the cart actually costs when you look at what it could have become instead. And once you've really sat with that, once you've really felt the weight of $904,000 that grew from $400 a month over 30 years, it stops feeling like deprivation, and it starts feeling like the clearest, most obvious decision you've ever made. All right, that's going to wrap things up for today. If this made you think about your own shopping patterns differently, drop a comment below. I genuinely read them all. If you found this useful, hit the like button. It helps more people find the channel, and share it with someone who needs to see this math. I'll see you in the next one.